So me and my coworker got talking today, and something came up that I didn't really think about when my dad mentioned it to me. He's worked in the agriculture industry for over 40 years. This year, farmers are being offered 1.5 times the value of their crops to destroy them. They're also being told by the federal government they will not receive subsidies for farming if they refuse to destroy their crops. What does that mean? That means that the farmer cannot afford to provide you with food based upon the taxes the government is levying on him if the government doesn't in turn give him back his tax money to provide you with food. Kind of a fucked up system, but that's how it works. And, well, they're not going to subsidize them if they don't destroy the crops. They'll pay them more than what it's worth, and they want them to destroy it, and they'll still get their subsidies. They're trying to create a food shortage. We've got 8 months to get our own food supply, or we're probably going to be facing mass starvation.
Oh, yes. Got our letter from the government paying us $3,800 an acre to destroy our crops. So I'm taking the shredder out, gonna go mow down some corn. $3,800 is $3,800, you know. Well, we're doing it, guys. Taking it down. $3,800 an acre to do this.
Well, what you saw right there ought to concern you. I was doing exactly what I was told via a letter I got last night in the mail from the Department of Hydrocarbons. They said in order to stabilize oil prices, they need a bunch of oil just dumped. And not dumped on the market, just dumped on lease roads and field roads and things like that. So I'm hooked up to that oil tank, going straight into my truck to get rid of it. Well, I'm going to get fined if I don't get rid of it, they said. So that prompted me to call District Selectman Tony Deloge and ask him about this letter. He said he didn't know much about it, but he would suggest that I follow whatever it says. So here we go. You know, these are some serious times right now. Since January, oil prices have been through the roof. I'm seeing more and more farmers on TikTok saying that the government's paying them to kill their fields. Agent Orange, I saw a guy with a lawnmower mowing down beans, getting paid to do it. They're controlling food. Now they're going to control energy. I don't understand why this is going on. But I tell you what, if they control food and they control energy, what freedom do you have left? Man, isn't this something?
Initially heard about the government paying farmers to destroy their crops, I thought it was a load of bullshit. Well, lo and behold, we received our destruction notice the other day. So basically, there was two options on how to destroy the crop. The government could fly on Agent Orange, or we could manually destroy the crop ourselves. We put too much blood, sweat, and tears in it to let them destroy it, so we decided to manually do it ourselves. Basically, it said if we used a lawnmower to destroy the crop, we could receive an extra $600 an acre. Something about the low carbon footprint or something. So that's what we're doing. Now, they really didn't tell us how many acres to destroy. They just said, get after it and we'll be watching you from satellite. We'll give you a call when you've destroyed enough. So I better get back after it.
Yep. Plowing it up. Government said they'd pay us $3,800 an acre. Hey, that's better than what Milo prices are right now. So, getting her done.
He's saying, is it true that the government is paying farmers to destroy their crops? And the simple answer to that is, yes, they are. So this farm here was selected to be one of them. Now, anybody with a half a brain knows you don't harvest in Illinois in July. I mean, look, right there. See that crop? Green as grass. Crop we're in, deader than a fucking doornail. So the government has went around into every county that's big ag counties in the U.S., and they've selected a certain amount of acres to come in and destroy. And these acres here got picked, so we had to destroy them.
This is the second machine that I dropped off here for the local farmers. Just want to show you a little bit of each drum. You got 4 of these drums, 2 on each side. Now you can imagine the damage they can do, not counting the blade which you can set down. So this will be the first field that we take care of. So all we're going to do is mash everything into the ground. And then I'm going to go pick up some steel plates, lay them across the road plates, so we can get the machines over there, start on that farm. So the farmers got paid by the government I don't understand what it's all about, but they got paid. Now they hired us to come in here and just destroy whatever we can. I don't understand how it all works, but we're already paid for a certain amount of time. You can hear the first machine already running out there. So when you hear them farmers saying they're getting paid to destroy everything, they ain't bullshitting, y'all.
Well, TikTok, I finally got my letter yesterday. The letter asking you to destroy some crop. Along with the letter, I had to sign for a certified package, which included these two binders, and then of course this 3-ring binder on how to properly dispose of your crops. And as you can tell, this here is the affected area in my section of the county, closest town, and of course you can't run away. They even know where you live. So from the county tracts, then they break it down into these individual farm tracts that you have to destroy. And you can see the crop or the field.
As long as we're together, it don't matter where.
And this administration's agenda is to control the food and control the people. Biden wants to push OSHA into an extreme heat index for outside workers. You guys want to know what he thinks is hot? 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Let me tell you, here in Tennessee, it gets humid. And I push past because guess what? My girls still got to get fed, and that's my priority. And I chose this life in agriculture to feed you and your families. And they are trying to put fear in our lives. They're trying to kill off the American farmer. I know. We moved from California because regulations were getting so bad. And they were providing water to Los Angeles and San Francisco instead of the Central Valley. And they're doing it across America, trying to regulate our land, take our water rights. It is happening. It is time to wake up and start supporting your local farmers and buy local.
This is the container that was in the video yesterday, and we have unloaded the container. Freight is sitting at ports. It is not moving, and we're talking ports around the world. Now, the freight that was on this container was shipped 37 days ago. This is that freight behind me. Somebody is intentionally hindering freight from moving back and forth. There are ports that are stacked. The directive is let it set. Let it set. I reached out to my largest customer, this customer, and that's what I was told. That the directive is let it set. We are definitely going to experience shortages, the likes of which you have never seen.
Walmart right now, and shit's getting real. Check this out. They're throwing everything away. Caution tape on everything. They're not letting us take anything. Cheese sections, yogurt section. Everything is done. Look at this. Apparently all this is bad. It's tainted, apparently. Look at this. They don't want us to take none of this. And the crazy thing is, I spoke to the manager, and the manager told me that this isn't the only store. There's 4 other local stores that are exactly the same. This is madness.
America is already suffering a food shortage, which can be felt by rising costs and emptying shelves at the grocery store. But this is a cakewalk. It's going to get much worse. The writing, as they say, is on the wall. Any reasonable person can see that this is all being done deliberately. Over 10,000 cattle just died, and we are told that it was due to 100-degree weather. And in just the past 17 months, nearly 100 disasters have mysteriously befallen the American food industry. Dozens of catastrophic fires burning down food processing plants, in multiple cases caused by small aircraft crashing into them. Thousands of tons of meat destroyed. Over 2 million turkeys have been destroyed. Over 40 million chickens have been destroyed. And with the rising cost of fuel, farmers are unable to harvest their crops. And it's only just beginning.
This is the second time in a week that something like this has happened. On April 14th, the plane crashed into the Gem State Processing in East Idaho. What's going on here? Well, the story gets weirder. Food processing plants all over the country seem to be catching fire. A couple of days ago, a fire destroyed the headquarters of Azure Standard, one of the largest organic food distributors in the country. At the end of last month, a fire severely damaged a fresh onion packing facility in South Texas. In Oregon, a potato chip processing plant just reported a boiler explosion that sent workers to the hospital. So industrial accidents happen, of course, but this is a lot of industrial accidents at food processing facilities at the same time the president's warning us about food shortages. They're getting hit by planes and catching fire. What is going on here exactly? Jason Rance hosts a radio show in Seattle and joins us to put it into perspective. Jason, good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah, obviously when something happens every so often, you obviously hope that there's no significant damage and certainly no one gets hurt, but you kind of write it off. It's not that big of a deal. Accidents happen. But when you've got well over a dozen food processing plants and warehouses getting destroyed or seriously damaged over just the last few weeks at a time when the food supply is already vulnerable, it's obviously suspicious, and it could lead to serious food shortages. That's why some folks are now wondering, well, number one, what's going on? And you've got some people speculating that this might be an intentional way to disrupt the food supply.
Wait, may I ask you to pause there really quick? Can I just ask you, I just want to nail this down so our viewers understand. There have been confirmed over a dozen disabling accidents at food plants in the last month, over a dozen.
Absolutely, and we're talking about some really significant plants. The Taylor Farms facility in Salinas, California was completely destroyed by a fire last week. We've had two major potato processing plants in Belfast, Maine and Warden, Washington that were completely gutted, which is happening at a time where we already have a potato shortage globally. You were talking about the onion supply at that Rio Fresh, but it's not just produce plants. Last month there was a fire that took out a Nestle food plant out in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and that's impacting frozen food brands like Hot Pockets or Stouffer's, which maybe you might buy if you can't get fresh food from a warehouse that just exploded. And that Shearer's food facility you just mentioned in the open, I mean, that's the only West Coast facility that they operate. So there is some significant concern, of course, that this is going to impact the supply chain. Now, to be clear, the timing is very suspicious. It's obviously concerning. Police are saying that these fires are due to faulty issues with equipment, so they're not saying that this was intentional. Either way, it's obviously going to have some significant, implications in us getting our food.
Yeah. I mean, an hour ago, a plane crashed into a General Mills facility. We'd already planned this segment. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The onus is on people who think that's a conspiracy theory to explain what is going on. What are the odds of that? I have no idea.
July 11, 2022. Welcome to the Stu Peters Show. My name is Stu. Well, Bill Gates first made his fortune in computers. But now the world's fourth richest man is pivoting from technology to the world's oldest source of wealth, land. He just can't get enough of it. Every year he just keeps acquiring more and more land. Just last week, he won legal approval to buy another 2,100 acres of farmland in North Dakota for $13.5 million. At this point, as we're talking right now, Bill Gates owns more than 250,000 acres, more than 250,000 acres of farmland in the United States. That's massive amounts of land. To get an understanding of how much land that actually is, it's more than 1/3 the size of Rhode Island. It's more than the 6 smallest countries of Europe combined. And remember, this is specifically farmland. This is a huge country, lots of land, but most of the land in America isn't used for very much. It's forest, or it's desert, or wetlands, or it's mountains, or just grassland used for pasturing animals. This land that Bill Gates is eating up isn't that. This is prime farmland, the most important land that we have. So here we are. It'll be fall soon. It'll be time for most of the world to harvest its crops. But all of the food that was supposed to be planted in Ukraine allegedly got screwed up by this war. All of the food grown in Russia has been screwed up by Biden's sanctions. And in the entire rest of the world, millions of farmers didn't even plant their fields because fertilizer was way too expensive. In the Netherlands, they're trying to crush their farmers' livelihoods. I mean, all over the world, circumstances are shaping up perfectly for a global food crisis. And now here we are with Bill Gates owning more land than anyone. What's he going to do with all of that land exactly? Farmland. What kind of genetically modified mutant food is he going to grow? Or is he just going to not grow any food at all? And since it's guaranteed that our fake lawmakers aren't going to do anything about all of this, what should we do? Clayton Llewellyn is the owner of Heaven's Harvest. Heaven's Harvest is a Christian-owned prepper food company with a huge variety of offerings. You can get buckets of survival food in amounts that'll last you anywhere from a few weeks to an entire year. You can also buy heirloom seeds for growing the same kind of non-hybrid, non-GMO vegetables that your ancestors grew a century ago, as well as recipe books for cooking with them. We encourage you to check them out, heavensharvest.com. And Clayton Llewellyn joins us now. Clayton, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you being here.
Stu, how are you?
This is a big deal. So here you have a guy that was in technology, computers, then got into eugenics, mass genocidal level murder, really, with these injections, the shots that he's highly invested in, and now farmland.
Yeah, Stu, I think that's just one part of the big picture, though, man. Like, and like you just said, you know what I mean? There's an outbreak. All of a sudden, he's invested in vaccines. There's a baby formula shortage. Now he's invested in that. There's a food crisis. This is an engineered food crisis, too. This isn't by accident. This is an engineered crisis. Now, all of a sudden, he's invested in farmland. And not just a little farm off on the side of the road, but 260,000 acres. Like, this is massive. A massive amount of farmland. If you control the food, you control the people. Now, that's not enough to put like a dent in, our food supply, but that is enough to start affecting it. You know what I mean? If he's going to lease that back to farmers, well, all of a sudden he says, look, you can't plant that this year. I need you to plant this. Or he's going to have, some of the other bigger companies in there that they're creating GMO seeds and GMO food that they completely control what we're eating, what we're growing. Like it's not good news. But like I said, I think that's kind of a small part in the big picture of what's going on. You know what I mean? Like you've seen everything that's happened so far this year. You see what's going on in the Netherlands right now. You know what I mean? The Dutch farmers are all up in arms and they're rioting. They're trying to tell them how much they can grow. They're trying to cut a third of the farms out of the Netherlands. That's huge. A third of the people out of the Netherlands. Like there's a crisis right now, a global food crisis. And instead of opening it up and letting everybody grow what they need to grow, we're condensing that. We're making it smaller. Like, why are we doing that? We're doing it here in the U.S. We pay farmers not to grow food. I mean, right now, when the world is hungry, we're paying farmers not to grow food.
And is this a plan that could be contagious? I mean, he's not going to be the only globalist billionaire that sees this as a great opportunity to seize control.
Absolutely. They're all going to jump on it. Well, they already do. I mean, so much of our farmland is controlled by giant corporations. It's no longer mom and pops growing, deciding what they want to grow. It's giant corporations growing our food.
And you mentioned that, he's going to decide what types of seeds, what types of crops. No, you're not allowed to grow that, but this year you're going to grow this instead. What if he just says nobody's going to grow anything at all?
And he absolutely can't do that. And our government's doing it right now.
At that point, is it enough to impact this country in detrimental ways that people can't recover from?
I think it already is, man. It already is. I mean, you look at like I said, you look at everything that's going on right now. In the Netherlands, they're cutting out a third. We're doing that here in the United States. We got bird flu that has popped up. We're killing millions of chickens right now because of one PCR test. Like, we know how accurate those are.
Yeah,
we're killing.
To Clayton's point, for the viewers that don't know this, 5.5 million chickens were slaughtered and killed because of one PCR test. Keep in mind, remember, this program consistently talks about the PCR test and how failed it is, and that it produces 97% false positives. You can run it under your water, your tap water, and likely get a positive result for COVID-19 or whatever you're testing for. 5.5 million chickens. We saw 10,000 cows dead. Boom. Just immediately because of heat. Who's buying that? Who's buying that?
There's 10,000 cows. We got fertilizer shortages right now. This is an engineered fertilizer shortage. Like, Stu, I don't want to get into politics about that or that too much on that side of it too much, but this is an engineered fertilizer shortage. You know what I mean? Ukraine can be a neutral state. We didn't like it when Russia stuck missiles in Cuba. Why can't we keep them neutral? And all of a sudden we don't have a fertilizer shortage. We don't have a wheat shortage. Like, this is all engineered. Our oil and gas right now, we've put sanctions on oil, gas. You know, it's running the price up on everything. Farmers aren't planting because they know it's going to cost too much to plant and they're not going to get their money back out of it.
So what do we do at this point? I mean, mass murder is the long game. Starvation is one method that they're going to use to do it. So how do we combat that?
We've got to have our own food. We've got to take our food. We got to take it back. This can't be a government-run entity. We've got to control it ourselves. And for years and years and years, we've controlled it. Look, they've tried COVID. We can't control people with that. You know what I mean? Half the population fell for it. The other half didn't. What's the one thing we all need? Food. How do we control people with the food? I mean, they've talked about it. This is the part of the Great Reset. You know, they talked about this at the World Economic Forum. The Rockefeller papers talk about this. Like, control the food, you control the people. And now we've given it up to Bill Gates, giant corporations. Like, they're running this one, you know, inside and out. You look at what Iran's doing right now. I mean, Iran's like putting up I know it's Iran, but they're kind of the first ones to start it, like a digital ID, to where if you want to buy food, you got to scan your face matched up to your driver's license, and then you get a discount on your food. I mean, you can still buy it, but if you want to pay $200 for a loaf of bread, you can buy it. If you want to pay $2, here, you got to scan your ID to buy food.
Technology that was designed for good is always used and morphed into something that can be used for power and control and to affect subservience. I predicted and was called crazy for saying a long time ago the vaccine passport is going to be used with blockchain technology, and likely your smart refrigerator will require you to scan your vaccine passport in order to even open it up and consume food that day. That's really where we're headed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is like a universal basic income disguised as food. You know, I mean, it's scary where we're going, and we've completely relinquished control of it. You know, we got to get back to where we take care of ourselves. You know, every family needs to have 6 months of food, a year of food. We need to start growing gardens. Stu, when I grew up, I remember Mom telling me to go down to the basement and get some potatoes out of the root cellar. Like, we all had root cellars. We all canned. We all had gardens. I mean, after World War II, we had victory gardens. We were encouraged to plant a garden to feed ourselves. Do you hear any of that right now? None of it. The only thing we're talking about is we've got world leaders coming forward and openly saying there's going to be a global food crisis.
And they're not lying, because they're the ones that are manipulating all of this. They're controlling it. They're the ones that are trying to do this to us, and we have to be able to stop them.
My friends, welcome. The mark is here. Iran is set to be the first country to roll out a biometric digital ID needed in order to buy food. Needed in order to eat. Right? Needed in order to survive. You must go get your digital ID from the government. The same digital ID that central banks are telling us is needed in order to roll out the central bank digital currencies. The same digital ID that the World Economic Forum establishes is at the very crux of this fourth industrial revolution. Yeah, all of that. Now you need to go get your ID in order to eat. Now there's some interesting details about the way Iran is implementing this that I want to walk through today, because I think this is a bellwether for how it's going to be rolled out around the rest of the world. And make no mistake, this is food rationing based on your digital ID. Let's read down here. You're able to buy as much bread as you want, but if you want to get the subsidized prices, then you're going to need the ID. Then you'll have access to, quote, a limited amount of bread at subsidized prices. And you can keep buying the rest at market rates if you want, right? You can buy as much bread for $1 million a loaf as you want. But for the 50% of Iran that lives below the poverty line, that's not an option, right? Their only option is to go get in line and accept this mark, this digital biometric ID, to which all resources are being tied. Not just bread, but according here, the scheme will later include all goods such as chicken, cheese, vegetable oil, and so on and so forth. And there's a lot to this story, from the fact that they cut off the internet for regular users, to the fact that there have been already fatal food riots and protests. So let's break it down. Here from Reuters: soaring bread prices spark protests and shop fires in Iran. May 13th, soaring bread prices have triggered protests in which some shops were set on fire, encouraging 22 arrests. The protests were triggered by a cut in subsidies for wheat that caused price hikes as high as 300% for flour-based staples. The inflation rate in Iran is already 40 to 50%, depending on who's counting, and half of 82 million people there are already living below the poverty line. Quote, the government will offer citizens digital coupons. That's the way they dress it up. Digital-friendly coupons with a smiley face on it that will allow them to access a limited amount of bread at subsidized prices. The rest will be available at market rates, right? You can buy as much as you want, as long as you pay exorbitant prices for it. As long as you're a millionaire, you can do whatever you want. This scheme will be enforced within 2 months. The scheme will later be expanded to include other goods like chicken, cheese, and vegetable oil, according to officials. So what better vector to force you to get your digital ID than with food? The price of wheat on the global market has jumped since the start of the Russian conflict with Ukraine, adding to the cost of subsidies. Of course, that's getting even worse this week as India announces they're going to completely ban all exports of wheat. Putting that aside, this has sent wheat up back again to a fresh high, a multi-decadal record price. So here, Iran has enforced internet shutdowns across the country as citizens are protesting. It's a tiered disconnection, meaning we're going to take down individuals, but if you're a business or a bank or a government, then your internet will continue to work just fine. Don't worry about a thing. In 2 months, citizens will be given digital coupons that will give access to a small number of subsidized bread purchases. Now, you can call it digital coupons all you want. Right? It's very clear. They can language it however they want in their corporate government stakeholder nonsense speak. The bottom line is people aren't going to eat unless they go to the government and get these digital biometric cards. It's planning to expand to cover other foods too. Many of Iran's poor can no longer even afford meat or other foods and have all turned to this subsidized bread just to be able to feed themselves and their families. So this is not an opt-in system, right? It might be dressed up that way. It might be presented that way. Let's talk more about this. This is the biometric digital ID that Iran rolled out just last year, actually. It uses a combination of the police database of the national IDs that they already have with a new app that you do like a 10-15 second multi-dimensional selfie to get your biometric data inputted. Users' digital ID is stored on your Android or iOS device. Yeah, Google and Apple, right there, custodians of the mark. Now, let's step back and bear in mind that this is exactly what the Rockefeller Foundation described in their Resetting the Table report, how we're going to transform the food systems as true cost accounting. It is the wet dream of technocrats to just be able to assign arbitrary values instead of letting the market figure things out to achieve the goals they want. They actually put that quite bluntly. To realize these changes, this transformation of the U.S. food system, we need to do some things, including true cost accounting, considering not just real costs of production and distribution, but extended and indirect costs, like, for example, the carbon impact, the cow farts. An example of that, like I said, is the carbon taxes on sheep or on any animals. Here it is in Canada, impacting hog farmers. Now, of course, any farmers are impacted by this. Here's an example here of how hog prices have been going up directly attributable to that carbon tax. And here it is broken down by animal. So when you see meat prices rising, yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that, but some of them are as simple as the government arbitrarily imposing true cost accounting because they don't want you to eat meat. That's the bottom line here. And it's working. As those prices rise and people can't afford food, then they'll be forced onto these handouts from the government, which are, of course, effectively another thing that the Rockefeller Foundation called for, universal basic income, only disguised as food. Right? They call it nutritional security because food is a human right. You can see now a lot of the agenda that's described by the Great Reset and the Fourth Industrial Revolution is being wrapped up in assistance to hungry people, because that's how they're ramming this agenda through. And so now you've seen the whole thing, right? We've talked about it for years, but now you've seen we're going to cause a tremendous run-up in food prices. When people can't afford to eat, we will offer them food tied to the exact system of slavery that we've been wanting to roll out. This is a classic problem-reaction solution, Hegelian dialectic played out using the most potent form of controlling people. As Henry Kissinger said, if you control food, you control people. And that's exactly what they're doing here. I think we're going to keep this as a short video just because this is such a potent thing, but let me also just quickly add that this is already being spec'd out and implemented around the rest of the world, although it hasn't been announced yet. That's the only difference, is Iran is already there telling their people to go get in line for a digital ID, whereas the rest of the world is all putting the systems in place and waiting until people get pissed off enough to tell them to go do it. For example, just as Iran will have now perfect data of who is buying what and where and when, right? They're going to know exactly who's buying bread and for whom at all times, because it's all going to be tied to these digital IDs. The government in the US is also working on something like that. They've already implemented an AI weapons system that is ingesting all retail transactions from grocers around the nation. This was done in early 2020, as you can read here from Defense One magazine, in order to monitor the supply chain for weaknesses. But in reality, the bottom line is they're aggregating all grocery transactions down to the retail level, tied to your little shopper ID thing, right? In order to keep track of where food is going. This is, guys, this is the easiest, most succinct way to say this is echoing the goals of Agenda 2030, which was perfect awareness of all resources and economic activity on the planet. That's what's being implemented here. That's what's happening to get this agenda through. And they will engineer any other number of crises and grid down situations, the cyber pandemic, right? We've heard them float all of their predictive programming already. And so we know what arrows they have in their quiver. But to understand what we'll be experiencing over the next few years, the most important part is that is the goal, is to get everyone tracked and traced and tied in. That's why we have satellites in the sky watching us called climate tracing. That's why we have biobots in our sewers sampling the wastewater to know what we're eating. They've announced these things. They said it wasn't just for pandemic detection, it was for monitoring diets. Okay? We are being tracked and traced and labeled and given digital IDs and food rationing from all sides right now. And this latest step from Iran, I think, is very illustrative, but it is still just one link in the chain that seeks to enslave us all. So please help me get the word out about this, and more importantly, start growing word so that you are not forced into this line to go get your biometric ID so that you can feed your family. That's the only way forward, folks. New food systems must be stood up now. Decentralized food systems and communities working in them and defending them against the powers that seek to enslave humanity. Let's go grow abundant food and raise awesome animals and have a good time doing it. Thanks for watching, folks. Be well.
So we're going to start out by talking about the imminent famine. The situation in KwaZulu-Natal, the KZN province, is becoming dire as stores are closed or empty. Most stores been looted multiple times. They're closed or completely empty. And gas is running out. One KZN farmer was forced to dump about 28,000 liters of milk a day amid the riots. And we have a video clip here of the milk being dumped onto the crops on a farm for some reason, which is kind of weird. Says, quote, a witness wrote, quote, National Warehouse situated in KwaZulu-Natal, the biggest food distribution center in Africa and South Africa, is being looted to the bone by thousands of looters. This is the central nerve center for bulk distribution in KZN, supplying ShopRite, Checkers, Woolworths, Spar, and Game. This means not only retail, but even the bulk supply of food channels are being completely destroyed in KZN. There will be starvation and famine in KZN as early as next week. The South African Petroleum Refinery Service announced it was temporarily closing. Due to the unrest, rioters were seen looting gas stations at considerable risk. And we have a video clip here of some of the rioters looting gas stations. Take a look. Taking gas from the tanks underneath the ground.
People are getting petrol directly from the underground tanks. A guy going right deep inside. Already they said this guy right up now.
Tommy, people are actually having full access to the mall right now. They are doing what they want to do. Some shops are being looted. Yeah, people are running in and out. They're carrying whatever they've been carrying. They've succeeded right now. So I'm not sure what is going to happen from this point. I don't think there's any manpower that is going to come from anywhere to assist police officers that are here. There's a food lovers market shop that is also being looted right now on our right. It's a fruit and veg shop. People are also getting inside there. There's a better bed shop that's also being looted as we're speaking. People are carrying plastics. Others are using trolleys. So it's a very bad situation. Towards this community, people are saying we are doing this because we're hungry. We don't have jobs. So if there's an opportunity for us to get inside the shop and get whatever we can for our families, that's exactly what we're going to do.
their IT and the ordering of the food. And then yesterday, I was told that they couldn't actually get delivery drivers. So I think you might want to now hear what this gentleman has to say. He's very well known and versed on this. And I would ask you, sir, to first of all introduce you by your name, and could you speak very loudly?
Okay, my name is Gurtan Singh, and I'm a human rights activist. The reality of food shortages, what is being set up in Europe, is the same what they done in Africa and the same what they done in Asia. The situation is they're deliberately destroying food in transportation and warehouses. The situation is the food is ready. They have both the food from the farmers is rotting in the warehouses and in the trucks. And the cover story they are selling the world is that there is shortage of drivers and secondly for the laborers. That is complete bullshit. The idea is simple. They want to starve you to death. And I want to make this clear to everybody. If you let them lock you down again, they're going to use the same propaganda they used in Africa and the same they used in Asia. They rot and destroy all the food crops, and what you're going to see is mass shortages of food in your warehouses, and you would be locked down. So if you let them lock you down, you will starve to death. I just want to let you people know that my family farms in both Italy and Spain, so this is a first-hand experience. They bought the vegetables from our farm, and we know it for a fact that they are rotting in the warehouse and in the trucks. There is no shortage of food. This is complete nonsense. They are deliberately destroying food. This is a part of an idea. This depopulation is an idea that there are not enough resources on this planet. What we have to realize, God has made enough for all of his children. This is complete nonsense. We have to override this propaganda, because if we don't reject their ideas, we will suffer the same way they're suffering in Congo from starvation, same way they're suffering in India from starvation, and same propaganda which we saw in the third world is coming here. Thank you.
Guys, have you ever seen this? I've never seen this in my life. They've started to do security packages on the meat. Co-op. GPS.
They're tracking your ass.
Co-op.
Victorians have lined up for kilometres today just to put food on the table. Foodbank has been inundated at pop-up drive-thrus, handing out free food to thousands of families battling the soaring cost of living. Adam Hegarty reports.
Thousands in a very long, different Sunday queue, not for the footy or a show, but for a food handout. The sign of the times is purple. Foodbank.
Bills are rising, everything's rising, petrol, everything's rising.
A little bit of help for, especially during school holidays.
In our cost of living hell, the charity is a godsend. Those at the front getting there 3 hours before gates opened, many lining new territory. Has your family ever sought charity like this before?
No, things are getting hard, you know.
2 drive-thrus, 2 boxes per car, with fresh food and pantry essentials.
We've got a few boxes for you. Do you want them in the boot or the back seat?
At Epping's Melbourne Market and Chobani Warehouse in Dandenong South, enough food bank supplies for 2,000 families. It wasn't enough. And yes, many here do work for a living. It's why it's happening on a weekend.
But it's not people on the street anymore. It's people in your street. A lot of the people have never been to charity before and don't know where to go to look for help.
This is the extent of the turnout. This was the first line that formed earlier today, but those at the end were told to redirect and get to the back of this second line. It stretches several blocks.
The United Nations Food Systems pre-summit last week in Rome recommended a dietary limit of 14 grams of red meat per person per day. That's 1 bite. As a servant to the people of Queensland and Australia, I'm appalled, and I'll explain how this is an attack on our farmers and on every Australian. The pre-summit recommended the introduction of a worldwide environmental tax on meat of $1.60 per kilo for cattle grazing on pasture, yet not for cattle raised in intensive feedlots. That distinction reflects the influence of large multinational feedlot operators and the lack of influence that family farms have in the UN's eyes. As my colleague Bob Catter rightly pointed out, this UN measure will take 2.4 billion kilos of protein off the market, starving 80 million people of protein. Yes, go the UN! The third recommendation of the Food Systems Pre-Summit is to move food production within reach of population centres and produce whatever protein and nutrition is possible in that region. It's called short-chain food supply. We did that 200 years ago. People starved, nutrition was poor, life expectancy was less than half what we enjoy today. Then along came long-chain food supply, allowing countries like Australia to grow crops to feed and clothe those in need. World hunger fell to less than 10%. The only reason there are still areas of poverty and hunger in 2021 is because of war and civil unrest. You know, the things that the United Nations were supposed to solve. World peace has eluded the UN, yet cows have not. The United Nations is proposing to eliminate global food chains that have brought good food to the world for hundreds of years. I've recently spoken about the false water shortage brought to you. Thank the UN's directive to not build new dams. This is the start of a false food shortage. The motivation is to eliminate broadacre agriculture, eliminate food exports, and return all that land to nature. Rural voters will be annoyed to hear that the Morrison government bankrolled this attack on our farming community with a $64 million donation. The Liberal National Government is funding our own demise, the betrayal and demise of our farmers, of our country. Australian farms employ 326,000 people directly. They contribute $75 billion to the economy and $60 billion to our exports. Without the bush, we'd be stuffed, broke and hungry. These three United Nations proposals will destroy rural Australia, wipe out family farms, crash real estate prices and further hollow out country towns, for no benefit to us. There's no better source of protein than red meat. Yet our supermarkets now stock protein and fake food products made from crickets. Why? Because billionaires can't make enough profit out of cattle. It's a variable industry with good times and bad. Billionaires can, though, make money on intensive cultivation of bugs for protein. This breaks the reliance on nature's weather and allows scheduled production of a food-like substance with great profit margins and low fulfilment costs. This satisfies the UN dictate for short-chain supply. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization is literally directing the replacement of red meat with bug protein. Skeptics can even attend one of the regular UN bug tastings where journalists are encouraged to extol the virtues of bug cuisine. The CSIRO has fallen in line behind the UN, publishing a 64-page love letter on the delights of eating bugs entitled Edible Insects, a Roadmap. Looking through the glossy pages, we see the CSIRO advocates our future should include insect milkshakes, bug ice cream and granola bars made from dried cockroaches. I'm not making any of this up. It's real. This is happening and we taxpayers are paying for it thanks to the Morrison-Joyce government. For those who think they're eating an environmentally friendly product, think again. A fake hamburger patty using plant or bug protein contains 20 chemicals found in pet food. That's all the UN and their quislings in our federal government think the public deserves, pet food. How does it make sense to grow good food and instead of eating that food, we feed it to crickets and then we eat the crickets? Fellow Australians, there is no protein shortage. There will be, though, if the UN succeeds in wiping out red meat production so they can hand the protein industry over to their big business corporate partners. One Nation rejects this attack on our farming community. We reject state and federal parliaments around our country continuing to demonise and isolate farmers. We will continue to oppose the UN dictating to federal and state governments. One Nation will continue to oppose ideology over humanity. We will continue to stand up for a fair society based on a citizen's right to exercise free choice about diet, health and business. We have one flag, we are one community, we are one sovereign nation. It's time to withdraw from the United Nations.
There's another Labour Party that's nearly just as detested as ours, and it's Labour over in Australia, as they are introducing new legislation that will make it illegal for a hunter to bring home a beautiful piece of venison or bring home a beautiful bit of duck and share it with their friends. That's right, they're making hunting and sharing food illegal. So what they're saying is that you can hunt if it's just for yourself, but the minute you go to share it, even if it's just a duck breast to a neighbour, you are then in breach and that is deemed illegal. Why is it that this government all of a sudden wants to make the sharing of meat between friends or neighbours illegal? Back in 2018, the World Economic Forum published a white paper, and its name was Meat, the Future. However, they weren't actually talking about meat in the traditional sense. What they are wanting people to move towards is they want you eating crickets and bugs. They want bugs to be the new meat. Now that's an odd thing, isn't it? Why would you want bugs to be the new meat for an entire world population? Why would you not want them hunting? Why do you not want children learning how to forage for food? Why do you put chemicals through the ground? Why do you not want people hunting and being taught how to be self-sufficient? What that would mean is people would be reliant more and more on government supplying those bugs for them to eat and get that source of protein. That in itself is an unnerving thought. Now, they are already trialling this with 4 schools in Wales in the UK. So they're starting with the younger generations and teaching them to try crickets and bugs as protein. You can take from this what you will. However, the World Economic Forum, as we all know, has become more and more powerful. They've written another paper about the future of food, and that was released just this year. It's no coincidence that multiple countries run out the same legislation in identical format in similar timeframes.
I'm Nicole Kidman, and I am going to eat a 4-course meal of bugs. I am here to reveal my hidden talent, eating micro livestock, cornworms. They're still alive. Extraordinary. Very moist, chewy. Can't quite describe the flavor, but need a little water. Let's try the second course, shall we? Just a little side note. 2 billion people in the world eat bugs, and I'm one of them. Because here we go. Have some mealworms. I'm telling you, I'd win Survivor. That is a fruity taste. I'd recommend it. Here we have. Crickets. Oh, nothing. Awesome. Like nothing you've ever tasted. Like a hairy nut. Don't. Oh my gosh. A nut from the shell. And now for dessert. The fried grasshopper. These are amazing. These are exquisite grasshoppers. I recommend them to anyone. Thank you for spending so much time with me and watching me eat bugs. Till next time.
You see the hard part where you have the teeth? Oh, wow. Take the fangs out.
Yeah. Have you done this before?
Yeah. I think it's always been a part of the diet, the bugs, but then I think there is a truth to the survival during the war. Yes. Of course, when people were being starved, they were able to survive on things like this, and they did.
When was the first time you had these bugs?
I first had them when I was first in country. Crickets. You start with crickets.
Yeah.
Crickets in a beer, and then you kind of, move up to tarantulas. Go ahead. How do you flip a scorpion? Good? Is that good, guys? Dinner. You want to share a spider? Hot?
So can I make one without flavor?
It's actually really good, the flavor. Okay. Nice. Huh? I can see why you're into this. It's hard to chew, the scorpion.
Dried chips.
Like chips, yeah. Some chips
like
and some...
flavorless chips.
Yeah. Many surprises.
Well, insects have long been a part of the diet in Asia and Africa. In Europe, not so much. But habits are, of course, changing, especially as people avoid more animal products. And some see a market developing there. Well, today the European Commission has officially declared mealworms to be food. It could be a game changer for insect farmers, many of whom are operating under temporary licenses. They're now hoping to grow their businesses and turn insects into another source of protein for Europeans, even if just a niche one. Our reporter Lars Halter visited one of Germany's largest insect farms and sent us this report.
Schnürpflingen, a little town in southern Germany, not far from where the Danube River starts its long journey east. There's a small church and fields as far as the eye can see. And it is right here where you can catch a glimpse of the future of our food. And these guys have nothing to do with it. No, we're looking at another source of protein, and it's coming from this rather nondescript place. 2 huge factory buildings. The farm is called 6 Feet to Eat, and they're raising mealworms here. These tiny insects, just over 2 centimeters long, could be key to feeding the planet. Literally millions of insects are being raised here. Mealworms, crickets, grasshoppers. Each breed with very particular needs, like steady temperatures of up to 40 degrees. The insects live for just 4 to 5 weeks before they make their way into a fridge, fall into a deep sleep that ends in a roasting oven. They're packaged and sent to stores, restaurants, or straight to consumers, who are currently paying premium for the product. But with the EU paving the way, the company hopes to produce cheaper soon.
So these are called Tenebria molotors. They're small mealworms, and these are some of the most common insects used in mainstream insect eating. These are the Zophoba moria. The vegetables that we use are from local shops. So anything that goes to waste, we take and give to our insects. The flavour that they have is kind of not conventional, because obviously you don't find insects that much in mainstream cuisine in the West. The smaller mealworms have like a nutty taste. The larger mealworms have the texture of chicken almost, but they also have kind of an almondy flavour. It's an interesting taste, and it works on a lot of dishes. It's usually used as a supplement, but you can also make them into flour, which is then used in biscuits and cakes. And it's really rich because of the protein, so you can make really filling snacks from them.
We know that there is no such thing as cheap energy, because the price of cheap energy has always been our lives, our health, our lungs, our cancer rates.
Millennials and people and, Gen Z and all these folks that come after us are looking up, and we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it? And this is the war. This is our World War II.
The trampling of indigenous rights is a cause of climate change. The trampling of racial justice is a cause of climate change.
The fossil fuel industry and the future of humanity are fundamentally incompatible. They just are. I mean, that's not a political opinion. That is the science. We continue to burn fossil fuels, our planet will become inhabitable. Even while I was on vacation, I woke up in the middle of the night at 3:30 in the morning, just concerned about climate change. I'm 29 years old. I really struggle sometimes with the idea of how to be a policymaker and potentially have a family in the time of climate change. And it really freaks me out, and it can be really, really scary. We are kind of blowing past a lot of the markers that scientists thought would happen years from now, and they're actually happening now. Our glaciers are melting, our sea levels are rising, and I'm scared sometimes too about the world that I'm going to be living in, that we're all going to be living in. I sometimes fear what we're going to be living with when I'm 40, 50, 60 years old. I'm scared about disease. There are a lot of things frozen in the tundra. I should put a timer on this, actually. Hold on. There are a lot of diseases that are frozen in some of these glaciers, that scientists fear that there's a potential that a lot of diseases could escape these melted glaciers, things that were frozen for thousands of years, and that they're going to get into our water, and that humans could contract them, and they are going to be diseases that are thousands of years old, that have vectors that we are not prepared for, that we have never seen. And so, that's a concern. Even if there are no diseases frozen at all in these glaciers, you have diseases that are spread by mosquitoes, and now mosquitoes are starting to fly further north that carry diseases like malaria and a whole slew of other things. So there's disease, there's sea level rise, there is, and by the way, sea level rise is probably one of the most expensive parts about climate change. You think overhauling our economy to decarbonize and save the planet is going to be expensive? Try not decarbonizing our economy and allowing sea levels to rise. You think artificially having to create our food supply because the earth no longer can sustain growing foods naturally, or the sun is scorching the earth so much that we can't grow the foods that we used to be able to grow? That's going to be a lot more expensive. So we need to bite the bullet on the cost, because the alternative to not spending the money is A, death, and B, spending even more money. So but anyways, I understand the fear, and I am not immune to that fear. I think about the kind of family that I want to plan, but even now, you know, when you put climate change on top of that, I know that I want to, you know, perhaps have one less child than I thought I would maybe have, if I can even have a child biologically. I don't know. Just, you know, I haven't tried. First of all, we need to start getting comfortable with how extreme the problem is, because only until we accept, frankly, how bad climate change is and how bad it can be for our children's lives, are we going to be comfortable pursuing really big solutions. And frankly, when it comes to climate change and climate change policy, we need to support the biggest solution that's on the table. This is not about like just putting solar panels on people's roofs. This is about changing our consumption. This is about living our whole lives in a way that is more sustainable and humane. And it goes through everything, and people may not like it, and they may say, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. Like, we're not trying to end cows and plane travel, but we need to change our lives. All of it. Our whole lives. There's a lot we have to do. And the thing is that the best thing we can do is be as supportive of climate policy and to prioritize it. Like, if you can make climate change one of your top 3 voting issues, that's a huge thing you can do. But also, if you change your personal consumption, that can do a lot as well. So I'll dig into it, but you can always look up a lot of the stuff that we've read. Let me just stir this real quick.